Thank you. So the next item is to the Minister for Environment, Community and Local Government, and it's the need to address the imposition of a full producer responsibility initiative on waste tires, particularly in the context of Repak's monopoly position in the disposal area. And it's in the name of Deputy Robert Troy. Deputy, 4 minutes.
Look, and I welcome the opportunity to raise this issue again. I raised this important issue in the past number of months, and in doing so because despite repeated efforts by way of written parliamentary questions, there's still some serious questions which remain unanswered. Since I raised this last here on the floor of the Dail, both representative bodies who have been engaged in the negotiations with the Department have pulled out of those negotiations. And I suppose I want to clear up a few things at the outset, and some of the misinformation that's out there, one being that this comes about as a request of an EU directive. That's simply not true. This is Minister Kelly's own idea. People have said from the Department, from the Minister to other members of government, that illegal dumping is at epidemic proportions. The EPA themselves say the figures are negligible. And the CSO in 2013 said 96% of tyres sold in this country could be accounted for. And I also want to put it on record that nobody condones illegal dumping of tyres or anything that would go against the environment. That's not what anyone condones. It is fair to say that representative bodies themselves will acknowledge that the existing scheme needs improvement, but that seems to stack from a lack of enforcement of the current legislation, that there's no sanction in place for non-compliance. Under the new self-compliance scheme, where tyre wholesalers and retailers are required to dispose of waste tyres, currently it's around €1, and that's not been passed on to the consumer. Under this new full PRI scheme, Repak and we are being appointed to act as monopoly collectors, recyclers for the whole tyre industry and across the board. This will cost in the region of €3 per car, so a tripling of the cost, and maybe anything up to €15 per truck or €20 for an agri tyre. The proposed scheme will fuel evasion, and there will be a surge in black market activity. It will send all buyers of truck and tractor tyres, especially across the border to Northern Ireland and the UK, when they can save themselves in the region of €100 or more for a single set of new tyres. And it will give external sellers a huge unfair advantage over domestic sellers. So if I could ask a couple of direct questions, and if the Minister could reply to the questions that I've asked here today. Minister Kelly has claimed he is formalising an existing charge with new tyre levy, but would he agree that the existing waste tyre disposal charge is only 80 cents plus VAT, as confirmed by Repak in a presentation, I understand, to members of the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party? The Minister continuously refers to tyre stockpiles across the country, but according to the EPA figures, the 5 largest stockpiles since 2007 were on the sites of licensed waste collectors. Will he acknowledge that? The entire tyre industry has withdrawn from this process. Does this not tell the Minister and his department that the proposed scheme is seriously flawed, and is it not time to bring the dealers and the representative bodies back for meaningful talks? Will the Minister acknowledge the figures produced by the independent tyre wholesalers and retailers associations that as many as 1,000 jobs could be lost across the country if he insists on bulldozing the flawed scheme? Would the Minister agree that the process of appointing Repak to administer this scheme was flawed, as it did not go out for public tender as it should have? And would the Minister also agree, or is he aware, that there has been an appointment of senior figures to Repak recently who had previously been involved in negotiations representing part of the tyre industry.
Okay. Minister.
Thank you, Lascar Hirlock. First of all, I want to thank the Deputy for raising what is an important matter, and I'm taking this matter on behalf of my colleague Minister Alan Kelly, and I'm happy to clarify for the Deputy some of the issues he has raised here on the floor of the Dáil. We have a serious problem with waste tyres here in Ireland, and some elements within the tyre industry will not face up to that problem. They don't accept producer responsibility, and they don't accept the polluter pays principle, which, as we all know, is fundamental to waste management in this country and indeed the wider European Union. Prior to the adoption of the current 2007 tyre regulations, my department made it very clear that this was the last opportunity for the tyre industry to embrace environmental compliance and to take responsibility for the waste it produces. The industry was informed that if the required improvement did not happen, the system introduced under the 2007 regulations would be reviewed and, if necessary, replaced by a full producer responsibility initiative, and that's the PRI model that the Deputy refers to. The required improvement, unfortunately, did not happen. A report on tyres and waste tyres published by my department in November 2013 found the following: a non-compliance rate with the tyre regulations of 46%, a lack of consistent and accurate data on tyres. The system was not tracking data. Data flows well, and between 25% and 50% of waste tyres were not accounted for, and we understand many of these were illegally dumped. In summary, this system, which has resulted in between 15 to 30 million tyres being dumped illegally around our country, is failing to provide a proper waste management system for tyres, and this cannot be allowed to continue. Following extensive discussions with the tyre industry through the establishment of a tyres working group, Minister Kelly announced his decision to establish a full PRI scheme for tyre and waste tyres in Ireland on the 30th of January last. The new scheme will be operated by REPAC, who have a wealth of experience, systems, knowledge and leadership in the area of environmental compliance, allied to a successful track record in target achievement. It is highly unlikely that any other organisation could offer the same range of benefits that REPAC offer and be operational in the space of time that this is required. Working alongside REPAC will be the WEEE Register Society, who has a similarly successful track record in the area of registration and reporting of producers. Since the decision earlier this year, significant progress has been made in discussions with the tyre industry. However, we have had to overcome an ongoing campaign of misinformation from some quarters, the main purpose of which appears to be to confuse the sector regarding the impact of these new structures. Deputy, there is nothing unusual about the designation of a single compliance scheme for a particular waste stream. Indeed, the PRI review examined this aspect and concluded, and I quote, "It is unlikely that licensing more producer responsibility organisations with a national remit will lead to better outcomes in terms of cost." Unquote. For example, we have only one organisation operating the producer responsibility scheme for farm plastics in Ireland, known as the IFFPG, and REPAC is the only compliance scheme for packaging waste. Prior to the establishment of REPAC ELT on the 1st of November, there was only one tyres compliance scheme in Ireland, just as there is only one tyre compliance scheme in the majority of the EU member states. The suggestion that some sinister new monopoly is being established does not simply stand up to scrutiny. What is in fact happening is we are trying to maximise efficiency by utilising expertise that exists in Ireland, while learning from successful examples from other EU member states, an approach which we are confident will deliver in an economically efficient way, but with significant improvement in terms of environmental outcomes, which we all, I think, agree is required.
Thank you, Minister, for coming back to me, and I appreciate you doing so. But there's still a lot of misinformation out there. And one of the points you said, the non-compliance rate with the tyre regulations is 46%. Well, Minister, numerically speaking, 46% of the economic operators may not have registered. However, financially, they equate for less than 5% of the total tyre activity in the market. You also talk about a large proportion of waste tyres being stockpiled. Again, one of my questions was, and again it was confirmed by the EPA, that the 5 largest stockpiles since 2007 were actually on sites of licensed waste collectors. Licensed waste collectors, not dumped around in ditches around about the place, which no one would condone. You haven't addressed the issue in relation to the appointment process for REPAC to administer this scheme. Why is it that this scheme was never put out to tender? Why is it that this new scheme is going to ultimately cost us consumers over €3 per tyre, when the existing scheme, acknowledged by REPAC themselves in a presentation, I understand, to your own parliamentary party, was doing it for 80 cents plus the VAT? It has come in since the beginning of the year, or since the beginning of November, this new scheme. How many people have signed up to it, Minister, if it's going so well? And in relation to the non-compliance and non-amount of information and statistics to hand, I have received correspondence from the Tracks Chair, who clearly outline the number of collections and all the information to hand going back from 2009 to 2014. So the information is there. The people will acknowledge that there was need to be greater compliance, and the reason there wasn't greater compliance was non-sanction. And who's going to provide the additional funding to the already cash-strapped local authorities to police the new regulations, considering that REPAC has no enforcement responsibilities, just like the previous collectors had no enforcement responsibilities?
Okay, Minister.
Look, one thing we will agree on, Deputy, is that there is a lot of misinformation out there, but I have put on the record statistics that are published by my department as far back as 2013. And one of those is quite startling, and that is, and I want to repeat, that between 25% and 50% of tyres are unaccounted for. So those tyres they're not on a licensed, as you say, licensed waste collectors or landfills. They're unaccounted for, so they either have been illegally dumped, or they've been transported somewhere, or they've been burned. Simply as that. So they're unaccounted for. And as we all know, it is important that we have environmental compliance, because if we don't, we are exposing the state and the taxpayer to fines and penalties. And that can indeed be far more costly, not only costly in terms of our environment, but costly to the exchequer and to the taxpayer as well. So as a country, we cannot postpone further, Deputy, the introduction of producer responsibility for waste tyres. We have to act, and we need a robust and comprehensive system of management for these tyres, and we need it urgently. Quite simply, the tyre industry now is being asked to do what all other sectors have done in terms of managing their waste products that they place on the market, no more or no less. The full PRI for tyres and waste tyres will be operated by REPAC. Work has commenced on the drafting of the new tyre regulations, and we anticipate that the new structures will be in place by the middle of next year. We are confident that the new arrangements will enjoy the full support of all members of the European Tyre and Rubber Manufacturers Association, who make up approximately 50% of the Irish tyre market. In addition, there has been strong uptake of membership of the REPAC ELT, including from members of the ITIA and the ITWRA. So again, just to reiterate, Deputy, I think environmental compliance is important. We are just asking this sector to step up to the mark in terms of managing the waste in a way that it is tracked and accounted for, because tyres are going missing. Between 25 and 50% are unaccounted for. Where they're going, they're either being dumped or burned. That is not good for our environment.
Okay, the next item is